This episode is brought to you by Spira Capital. Founded by 2008 Ron Brown scholar Ethan Monreal Jackson, Spira Capital is your fractional C-suite. Whether you're a startup or a venture firm, a freelancer, or a family office, Spira Capital gives you the scale, support, and stability to grow. Stop worrying about stuff like bookkeeping, accounting, FP&A, operations, HR, payroll and benefits, or your international workforce. Let Spira Capital run those for you so you can run your business. To learn more, visit spiracapital.co. That's C-O. Welcome to The Value of One, The Power of All, a podcast created by the Ron Brown Scholar Program. Since 1996, this organization has been investing in the next generation of African American leaders. And this podcast highlights the stories of the people that make this program special. I'm your host, Ray Pryor, 2015 Ron Brown Scholar. And in this season, presented by the Ron Brown Venture Lab, we're highlighting founders in our alumni network who are changing the world through innovation and entrepreneurship. We'll dive into their personal upbringings and backgrounds, the origins of their ideas, and the successes and challenges they've had along the way. Today, I'm excited to share my conversation with Colin Webb, 2014 Ron Brown Scholar and the founder and CEO of Avatar Robotics. Can you just share a little bit about what Avatar Robotics is and what you've been building?
Yeah, so Avatar Robotics is building the flexible industrial workforce of the future, basically turnkey robot fleets that you can bring into a warehouse or a factory and turn on to do 24.
Some of our loyal listeners will remember you from now. It's been a couple of years. You were a founder, you were building a company, but it wasn't this one. What's been up with you since we talked about you and Sauce with Brandon maybe a couple of years ago now?
Yeah, the last time I was on an RBS podcast, I was still building my previous company, Sauce, which was doing automated marketing and pricing for restaurants. And since then, we got acquired last year in summer 2024. We got acquired by a company called Virtual Dining Concepts, VDC, which is the largest virtual brand company in the world. So they acquired us, brought in our entire team, and then we worked with them. My co-founder and I, we worked with them for the majority part of last year to make sure that our teams were integrated and everything was launched properly in terms of the new products that they wanted to launch.
And congratulations again on the acquisition, and now reaching the end of that transition period of stepping into something new. Over the course of your whole life, went to MIT. I remember you talked a little bit about your work with Cruise early on and self-driving cars. You spend your time with dynamic pricing and marketing with restaurants, but very different than robotic fleets that are going to work 24/7 in industrial parks around the country or even the world. Tell me, how long have you been thinking about this, and where did the origin of what Avatar is now start?
Yeah, can definitely dive into that. So Avatar is a relatively new idea that is able to be implemented and started from the ground now based off of some things that have changed within the last 5 to 10 years and developments that we've seen with technology, which I can go into. But my journey with robotics actually started back in 2010. And that was, I would say, what got me into MIT and through high school. So back in high school, I'd built all types of different robots, did first tech challenge, first robotics challenge. I did VEX, I did best in ROV, which were underwater submarines. And essentially, by the time I was graduating high school, I had the privilege of leading a robotics club that had 13 teams and sent half of them to world championships. And so I was doing that, was starting like local robotics clubs in middle schools, which a decade after that now, it seems like we've been able to turn different middle schools into STEM schools where they're now teaching like programming classes and 3D printing and all of these things in addition to just, engineering and building robots. But that was what carried me into MIT. And then from MIT, was able to do robotics basically my entire undergrad. I studied mechanical engineering and computer science, ended up working on everything from drones and AI edge computing for autonomous drone devices all the way to autonomous environments that like kind of can sense motions and see what you're doing and basically react to that, all the way to after graduating college, working on self-driving cars, which I was on the autonomous sensing team at General Motors and Cruise, working particularly on LiDAR, cameras, ultrasound, everything that can see or sense an object on a road and determine what it is. And what it is and what to do with it. And so that is kind of my journey in robotics. And then Sauce actually was a slight diversion from that first roundabout starting a company and trying to find product market fit, which brought us into the restaurant industry. So now I'm glad that we're able to get back to what I love best, which is building robots.
Sounds like you found your way back home where things all started. What has changed over the last 15 years that made something like Avatar possible today? We all have sci-fi fantasies of what robots can do. What's different now that made this the right time to build Avatar versus whatever might have been holding the space back in the past?
For sure. Robotics in the past used to be very expensive and decently inflexible in the sense that, it used to cost millions of dollars to buy robotic systems and install them into some facility. And usually if you're bringing robots into a factory, they can do one thing, and that's take something and move it over there. And it's usually the same type of item. It's the same form factor. The robot's built for that one purpose. And if you had to change a part or change the flow of what you wanted to do, you needed to either build an entirely new robot or build all new programming around your existing robotic machines in order to re-automate that. And so some things that have changed that have made today really interesting, and especially an opportunity for Avatar, is that robots are cheap. You can buy robot arms and automated robot moving platforms for relatively low cost. There are a lot of people around America who have a Roomba in their homes, right? And that itself is a robot. That didn't exist, 20 years ago in mass. And so, you see that this world where technology's gotten more affordable than ever. We see this world where labor has gotten harder to come by than ever. People would rather drive Uber than work overnight in a warehouse or in a factory. But the demand is so high because everybody wants their overnight shipping and everyone wants their items and their food and everything to be cheap and affordable. But that actually requires people to be there to get them the items that they need. And so how do you bridge that gap? I would say that the final component that makes things make sense are that while AI has made advancements in being able to learn the world around us, we're still a far way away from AI being able to manipulate all the different items that we have to manipulate today. However, we've kind of built over the last 5+ years, especially due to COVID, this massive remote workforce of people who can essentially connect to any device from anywhere in the world and interact with you, whether that's on video call or whether that is directly controlling a robot. And so to me, with Avatar, that's now come about today is that, we can obtain cheap robotic hardware. We can connect people from all around the world, like in India or Colombia, to control these robots and actually solve the labor problem and work in the factories and warehouses across the US today that we're struggling to get people to work in.
Yeah. Man, a lot of fascinating things I want to dive into there. First, just to make sure I have it right, the robots and AI aren't yet at the point where you can give it a task and let it run off with it, but we have the technology for a pilot, if you will, to be anywhere in the world that helps manage, oversee, troubleshoot, figure out what the robot needs to do. And that person certainly can reprogram whatever today's task is or reprogram what this hour's task is going to be. So that's really fascinating. But I don't think what you're describing is absent of the macroeconomic context that we're in. It sounds like your focus is U.S. factories and industry. Geopolitics is all that people are talking about, even independent of robotics. We have a huge problem in the United States economy that all these industries that we en masse don't want to work in anymore, but that we certainly need things in the physical world to move fast and be delivered fast and packaged and made. We don't have a solution outside of figuring out what we're going to do with other countries, and that we don't know what tomorrow will look like as it relates to that. Avatar's kind of stepping in to fill the void in a lot of ways. Is that how you're thinking about it? Are you thinking about it as a resurgence of American industry? I just feel like the ramifications for what you just described are pretty big.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a resurgence of American industry, and I think it expands American industry. So right now, there are 600,000 unfilled manufacturing jobs across the United States. Meaning, if we had an extra 600,000 people who wanted to work in our factories, we'd hire them right now to work in our factories. We don't have those people. We don't have the folks to work in factories. We don't have the folks to work in our logistics and distribution centers, which means we have to operate at below our capacity. We could produce more. We could get things to people for cheaper. We could get items to folks faster if we're able to have a solution. And that's what Avatar is building. And so you initially start to see these robots augmenting our production facilities, allowing us to actually expand to real 24/7 operations, which is huge. It's what will eventually drive down the cost of everything that we buy to something that's extremely affordable and extremely cheap. But it'll also drive our learnings about how to manipulate the physical world, because you can train AIs on the systems that humans are operating with our robots. And so when you start to do that, then you start to expand beyond just the industrial cases into perhaps the service cases or perhaps the home cases, where other markets in the world, you might have a country in Asia where it makes sense for every single middle class family to have a maid in their home who can clean up their entire home, cook their food, take care of the house, take care of the perimeters and whatnot. But we don't have that economy in the US. There's nobody who can from the middle class on average afford that type of service. But with robots, we could eventually see something where everyone has their own, personal service robots that can do anything that we'd want them to do.
But I'd like to explore that a bit more. This need, it's certainly a very big challenge in the American economy, but it's not unique only to us. And over time will probably be a challenge that other countries encounter over the course of their own development too. It makes sense to start here. You're here, and there's certainly a need. Is your vision for Avatar to see these robots everywhere in other countries across the world too, or is there a something unique here in America that you think will make either the economics or the tech or the whole process work really well, given something that might be unique to our context here?
I think ultimately expands to worldwide and everything that we handle physically in the entire world, which is quite a lot. If you look at the world's GDP, about half of it is based off of manual labor, right? So like half of the entire world's GDP are things that we literally like manage and handle physically. And so when you're able to bring robots to fill that need, or even a robot fleets who are operated by humans, that allows us to build way more than we'd ever built in any period in history. It allows us to have resources, whether that be food or whether that be consumable goods or whether that be technologies, more affordable than we've ever had before. Infrastructure as well. So expanding across the entire world will connect the entire world in a way that we've never seen across history before.
It sounds nothing short of an industrial revolution or another iteration of it. AI will certainly play into what you're doing. You'll have amazing applications that you'll have from that. But at least from what people see on their timelines, what gets talked about a lot, it feels like a lot of the frontier of technology that's getting all these breakthroughs happening on the digital side. But the physical world and all of the things that need to be optimized there isn't really talked about as much. Maybe if it's a hard tech or deep tech thing or about energy, but like you just described, half of everything that anyone in the world ever creates of any economic value isn't in software, isn't on a computer. It might be the computer, but it isn't on a hard drive or chip or anything like that. How are you feeling about building this at this particular time? When it feels like everybody feels like if the smartest minds are running to AI and software, but you're going kind of back to the basics of this package needs to get here. This palette needs to move into this section. This needs to go into the deep freezer. How are you feeling about building in this moment when perhaps what's catching a young Colin's eye might be AI over something like robotics? And
There are a lot of AI systems that are helping us every single day in the physical world, whether that be if you need to drive somewhere and you use something like Google Maps to get there, or whether that be, you're grabbing something from the grocery store and the logistics provider has used some sort of AI to get your package initially from wherever it's sourced in some other country all the way overseas and to local distribution centers, and then all the way over to where your grocery store is. I think there's a lot of AI that's at play, at least in terms of our kind of mapping of goods and resources from one place to another at a large scale. And so this is something that I would say builds a map to allow us to control resources and goods at a small scale. Because ultimately, you can get a truckload of something from one place to another, but every single truckload of whatever particular item you have, somebody has to go and manipulate. Somebody has to go and grab those items, and whether that's assembling a kit of something. I was just at a warehouse earlier this week where they're putting together kits of dog toys, and they're literally a production line of people who's putting or so dog toys in a box and assembling that box and then basically putting stickers on that box to give to you. That's a place where I would say the AI breaks down and we don't have intelligence systems to do that last piece. You think of items like food, where every single carton, you may have a pallet of fruits, and like you go to the store and buy a mango. At some point, that mango is part of like a gigantic pallet of fruits, and there's literally millions of these pallets of fruits floating around the United States. And for every single pallet of fruit, somebody is sitting there and testing 10% of the fruits on that pallet to make sure that they are safe and edible, and make sure they pass particular quality standards. And so there's people who have to literally take every single case of items off of that pallet to grab 10% of them, some from the top, some from the middle, some from the bottom, grab the fruits, and then bring them through some testing sequence. And like these are the places where AI breaks down. These are the places where it's manual. These are also the places where this work is very, very like mundane and laborious. Like there are people who are literally working in a freezer or in a refrigerator the entirety of the day, 24 hours of the day. These facilities are operating, right? Handling like all of these pallets of fruit. And you can imagine a similar type of manual work that's required at some point in the process for every single item that you can look around your room and see. So I think we see AI at the large scale, but now we're starting to be able to bring AI to the small scale physical world, which is in everything that we have around us.
Yeah, I talked to you about my father-in-law and I restaurant ventures, and we would be with those people at Restaurant Depot or wherever who would just spend all day in the freezer. Got whole entire dumpsters, and that's literally all they do is move pallets and truck things. But I can see this opening up a whole new host of opportunities, even for them, but let alone just for the industry. Anything that stands out to you from your time building sauce that has proved especially helpful in Avatar, or does it feel like completely different spaces that perhaps the same muscles of being a founder and building, but direct learnings from sauce? Perhaps it's too different to apply to Avatar.
There are a lot of similarities. Building a company, fundraising, convincing people to buy your product and to join you, and getting feedback from customers, and knowing how to go about that process, along with the engineering, of course. I've learned a lot that is applying here. I'd say an interesting one, at least in terms of how people think about automation. There's always the question of, is this going to be something that gets rid of jobs or like replaces people's jobs or put people out of jobs? And there's always that concern that folks have. And I'd say one of the examples that was really helpful to see with Sauce, that is also going to be something that we'll see with Avatar, is that when you automate and when you bring new technologies into the picture, it doesn't necessarily remove jobs. It actually just allows those same people who have those jobs to now do their jobs at scale. And so, to give an example of automated marketing, we were building software systems to basically run marketing campaigns for restaurants. And historically, you'd have some marketing manager at your restaurant chain manage and create a handful of campaigns per quarter. And they'd be tracking these campaigns each month and making sure that they're performing the way that they want. And so now we have a system that can launch these marketing campaigns for the marketing manager. And what do? They don't replace the marketing manager and say, hey, let's have the system do all the marketing instead. They say, oh, no, well, if this system's going to be launching campaigns and deciding which campaigns to launch, well, why don't we just have the marketing manager manage thousands of campaigns that are launched? You can launch multiple campaigns, hundreds of campaigns over the course of a day, actually individual custom campaigns at every single restaurant location, depending on the hour, depending on the time of day, depending on the demand and the customer feedback there. And so now that marketing manager is amplified, having a much closer touch point by being able to operate at scale. And so I think you'll see that same type of trend with robotics coming into the physical space. Just as you saw with, Amazon Robotics acquired a company called Kiva Systems, which manages items in a warehouse. And they have a bunch of ground vehicles, which will manage all of the items in the warehouse so that nobody has to go and walk 10 miles a day to go pick items from the shelves. When Kiva Systems was getting started, whenever they sold to customers and said that, hey, you can do this job. You have 100 people at your facility now. Now you can do the same job with 33 people at this facility. They didn't reduce the amount of people that they had at the facility to 33 from 100. They actually just ended up managing 3 times the amount of products in their facilities, and kept all those 100 people, and just operated at scale. And so I think you'll see the same type of scale, and that's something that I've seen maybe common between Sauce Journey and Avatar.
And it's kind of contrary to the surface level narrative or myth, that when technology comes, jobs get replaced. There is no company that doesn't wish they couldn't do 3 times more than they're doing right now. An independent restaurant owner, if you take care of their marketing, I promise you, there's no shortage of other things that they would be doing with their time. Now that you freed them up to do that, you've just expanded the possibilities, just like you described. And I think to hope that that continues to be pushed more than just the uh, zero sum game that always feels like it is between labor and tech. And I think you're striking that great balance. You talked about how robotic parts and sourcing is cheaper than it's ever been before. I don't know where you're sourcing, but if it's not in the United States, recent things in tariff land could change that. Has or would that impact you and what you're thinking about? And has that been a major concern for you and changed a lot about perhaps the economics around how these things work? Or is it perhaps something I would imagine you would have to think very, very long term about this and know that things are going to go up and down over the course of time, that Avatar will exist for a long time through many different administrations, economic cycles, and anything from the recent news it's been like catching your eye or made you have to think about things twice?
Yeah, and across many industries, since everyone imports things from China and from everywhere around the world, I think the uncertainty for a lot of business leaders has been definitely a challenging thing for them to manage. It's hard to figure out where to invest as a company if the dynamics are always changing. For us, I think we've been relatively fortunate amid all of the tariff and trade wars, in the sense that because we're not reselling our robots and we're bringing our robots in, operating them as a labor service, we are able to basically not have many of those tariffs applied to us, and also be a part of the AI tariff exclusion. So far, it's been relatively non-impactful, at least for us, our business. And I think in terms of us as a country, America, trying to bring more manufacturing and bring more automation into this country, we're at the center of that. There's only one way that you're going to bring more manufacturing to the United States at this point, and that's literally through robotics. And so we're at this very unique and helpful time, that positions us as a robotics company to be able to help, given all the work that we're trying to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, even if it is a major concern for your customers and your clients, I can see this being the thing that they need to do in order to be able to weather through whatever macroeconomic things it could be. Today it's tariffs and trade wars. Tomorrow it'll be interest rates. A year from now it'll be something else. But like you said, there isn't anything else coming to save American industry except what we can build and automate right here at home, which I think is great.
And oftentimes the reason that we were pushed to build cars in
Mhm.
Mexico and in Canada were because we could get benefits of having more affordable labor, right? And the reason we're building so much of our products are built in China is because the labor market supports it, and labor rate, people working literally 12 hours a day, the 996, for way less than the hourly rate that we work here in the US. It's because that labor opportunity. And so if we want to make anything here, we're going to have to figure out how to either use robotics or how to kind of outsource our physical labor to get those same type of competitive
Yeah, for sure. Have you encountered any other, perhaps like policy or infrastructure, either barriers or things that you think would help unlock what you're doing even further than is what's possible right now? I'm wondering if there's anything more that the United States could do to fuel the type of innovation that you would bring to the economy.
I think as you start to see more success with AI enablement in the physical world, so AI machines that are operating physical devices, I think that'll build a lot of momentum within, our U.S. government, within our companies. Everyone is obviously investing extremely heavily in AI, and I think we're at this great place where people believe in it. They've seen it work for usage on the internet, and we haven't quite seen in terms of AI driving physical devices outside of self-driving cars. We haven't quite seen this massive demonstrations of success yet. And so once we start seeing that, once Avatar starts, displaying things like that, then I think our companies and our government are definitely well poised to get behind that. And once you start seeing that massive investment in the space, even more than we are now, that's when I think you really start to see these machines scale up and become much more prevalent.
Yeah, I can see that. Sometimes the innovators like yourself got to drag the government and everybody else along, but you got to prove it first.
You're seeing the early innings of that. I mean, we have so many protections for NVIDIA right now.
Right.
Then making sure that NVIDIA is successful, and NVIDIA, their big business play is if we can make robotics happen, then that like multiplies the size of their market, right?
Yeah.
In addition to all the computer chips that you'll need, if you need every single chip, every single robotic device having chips, and you have at least as many robots as computers that we have today, that's huge.
Yeah, it's crazy to think about that we will have as many robots as computers. And it's hard to imagine a world that we're not getting there, at least sooner rather than later. Two last questions for you before I let you go. One, when we say robots and they're working in factories, mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. Most simply and concretely, what do you imagine the first fleet of Avatar robots being able to do, and then what do you kind of imagine down the line the fleet of Avatar robots then being able to do in the future?
Yeah, great question. I would say at the very beginning, it's basic pick and place material handling work. So that means picking something up and moving it somewhere else. And you'd be surprised at how much work there, like manual work there is today across the United States and every single city where people are literally just picking something up and moving it somewhere else because there's no system that is intelligent enough, reliable enough, fast enough to be able to do it as quickly and as affordably as a human. And so that'll be the first case that we see a lot of implementation around. And then I think as things scale, then it's everything. You could take humans out of dangerous environments and have people controlling robots from the comfort of their homes. And you no longer have to send people into a mine, right? You no longer have to have people working in factories on 2 a.m. their time and being away from their family. You could have folks out of the comfort of their homes controlling robots from anywhere in the world and managing fleets of robots that way. And I think that not only will make things more convenient and just better, safer for everyone, but it'll also make our entire economy and all the goods that we buy just much more affordable and much more available and fast in terms of delivery to us. So yeah, I think it expands to everything that we have to handle in the physical world.
Man, it's fascinating. I can piece together what I would imagine your response is from this last question, but it's one I've been asking all the founders in the series at the end, particularly for somebody like you, where with your time at MIT, with all the projects that you've been on, with everything that you've been doing in robotics in high school to so on, you could pretty much do anything you want to do. Your life is a blank canvas that can be a product of whatever you want. Why Avatar specifically for you? What is the why of all the things you could be building, all the companies you could be starting right now? Why this as opposed to anything else?
Good question. There are a couple of answers. One, I think it can have the biggest impact on the world for any idea I could think of in terms of, if you're able to automate all physical work in the world, like that creates opportunities for everyone and creates an environment where we can be more creative and we can have resources as cheaply and affordably as possible. I'd say that the second answer is I've always believed very much in being able to work in an environment where you're mixing your passions with your strengths. So for me, that intersection between passions and strengths are robotics and being able to build systems that move. Like I love building these types of systems. I'm also pretty good at it. And you want to be in a place where you feel excited to work crazy amounts of time on solving some problem that you're really passionate about. And so whatever that is, for anyone listening, whatever that is, try to find the place where you're mixing the thing that you're passionate about with the thing that you're actually good at, and then you'll grow tremendously there.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Value of One, the Power of All, a podcast created by the Ron Brown Scholar Program, presented by the Ron Brown Venture Lab, and sponsored by Spira Capital. If you want to hear more inspiring conversations like this one, don't forget to click subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. And to learn more about the organization, check us out at ronbrown.org.